New shooter coverage of NAB 2024 is sponsored by Atomos, B&H Photo Video, and Atlas Lens Co.
Hi, it's Matt here for newshooter.com at NAB 2024. I'm at the Blackmagic Design booth. Now, the new Ursa Cine, in case somebody's been living in a cave and they don't know about it, just give us a quick run through about what this camera is capable of doing.
Right, yeah, so this camera really is the culmination of all the work we've been doing over the years around our digital cinema platforms, and the camera that we wanted to build, kind of a no holds bar, no costs, really imperative. What camera could we build that answers everything we know that a digital filmmaker would want today? So that starts with a redesign around the Ursa camera platform, integrating a whole new range and raft of technologies that we can talk about, and then takes our 12K camera sensor platform up into a large format. So now we have that 35 or greater full format 12K camera sensor with the RGB technology that we introduced a few years ago on the first one, delivering what we know is the best camera that we've ever put into the market and represents a real large step forwards into the digital cinema camera market.
And in terms of, I think one of the most interesting things about this camera is probably its high frame rate capability at high resolutions.
Yeah, so when you shooting at 12K, we still get a very healthy frame rate in terms of production capability at OpenGate 3.2. The camera performance, because it being RGB, we can do in-camera sensor scaling. So as you go down into 8K, 4K, you don't lose your field of view. And then a natural ability within there as well is if you start stepping down into 2.4 to 1, you at 8K can get about 144 frames a second. You go further than that if you step down again into 4K, and we can get above 200 frames a second to give you some real super slow-mo performance in the camera as well, without affecting a crop effectively as well. So other systems would want to crop the sensor down to drive that frame rate up, but with the capability we have in the camera that being RGB, we can actually do that whilst keeping the field of view in frame as well.
And there's a new colour science with this camera as well.
Well, we build it around the Gen 5 technology, but where that integrates into the new sensor is with it being RGB. So what we have there is, rather than a Bayer sensor which has a non-symmetrical readout, RGB gives us that colour uniformity on the readout per colour channel. We then have W pixels, which are effectively white for luminance. So with that we can balance chrominance and luminance performance of it. So it gives us a really strong foundation in the camera technology, and then drives up our dynamic range. Once you take that across into DaVinci Resolve with things like highlights recovery, we can even take that latitude even further. So we get a real strong performance in terms of colour fidelity through the camera system.
Now, this is the first camera that's actually using proprietary media in a Blackmagic Cinema camera. I guess the rationale behind that is you sort of had to do it.
Yeah, we're finding that the performance and what we want to drive from a sensor and from a format and resolution point of view is starting to outpace media. So what we've designed is a new module system that uses NVMe M.2 media, which can have a very high rate of write speed. So when we're working at, let's say, the very high end, 12K, full open gate, we're talking very high gigabit data write speeds that CF Express or CF Express, sorry, can't really keep pace with. So these modules give us a performance and a reliability that we know that when you want and expect that level of resolution at 12K or 8K, you're not going to be let down with drop frames or lack of performance in the media. It also gives us faster read-off speeds as well, so when we do data transfers, we can actually make sure the production is efficient in terms of the media that's coming off. Now that doesn't mean we rule out third-party media either, so we don't want this to be locked in just to Blackmagic media. We know we wanted to take that step forward, but there will be a module system that lets you use CF Express, and the module system can actually just come out from the camera. So it's a slot-in system that uses 4-lane PCIe. You can have multiples of these if you want to. You get an 8 terabyte with the camera, so you can buy multiple units if you need them, or you could replace it with the CF Express version if you wanted to shoot maybe in 4K or lower rate 8K, but naturally that will have a limit on the write speeds. So we'll give the operator the choice of what they prefer to use.
Now, it comes with an 8 terabyte version. As you said, you're probably going to open this up to other manufacturers. Is there plans for Blackmagic to make a higher capacity one or a lower capacity?
Well, we have spoken about doing maybe a 16 terabyte capacity that would then go into the camera. That's a lot of space in terms of, maybe the 8 terabyte will also already allow you at 12 and 8K resolutions between 4 to 6 hours of recording in Blackmagic RAW, depending on the option you've chosen. But certainly if there's a demand out there for higher capacity, we've spoken about the potential of doing a 16 terabyte module as well.
And you were telling me before that technically it's possible to sort of record and offload at the same time, but you you maybe don't recommend that?
Yeah, so the camera has a 10 gig Ethernet port built in, as well as Wi-Fi. Now the Wi-Fi is really probably best for lower bandwidth proxies, so it will do proxy recording in H.264 HD files, which gets you started maybe with an offline online process or link. But when you really want to work with the camera at those higher resolution files, or those 4 raw files, you can use the 10 gig Ethernet port on the camera to connect into a network service, and we can use Blackmagic Cloud and DaVinci Resolve projects to start working directly with the media and bring those in. You can support as well with our REST API integration, so we can actually interrogate the media, and you can actually see the media that's in the camera. You could technically record and take media from the camera at the same time. Wouldn't recommend it because obviously you'd start to get disbalances between the write speed and the read speed. But the capability's in there. But what's more important for us is that you've got this immediate connection and interaction with post, whether that's just data wrangling, whether that's building offlines or starting to work from a grade point of view immediately with the camera. You may not even need to ever take the media out. So what you could do is maybe between setups, camera setups or relights or whatever, you could be taking media from the camera straight across to data wrangling and then into post, and just keep the camera ops working on what they need to shoot, free up some space for them as you go, and start your data movement straight off without even having to take the module out of the camera.
So in terms of power, this is actually a 24 volt camera, I believe. So it comes with a B mount as standard?
It does, yeah. First time we've used B-mount on our cameras, it's been V-Lock or a gold mount typically. But with the power draw that you're going to need, we're driving quite a lot of performance and electrical demand in the product. So 24 volt really is a digital cinema standard for us as well. It means that we can bring those through. It does come with a B-mount fitted as the option in the camera. We will be looking at doing a V-Lock or a gold mount alternative if that's your battery preference, but 24 volt being the standard for what the camera needs to do, certainly a higher frame rate performance if you're attaching multiple accessories and driving those from the camera, and also we're driving like 2 LCDs and a lot of cooling in the system as well.
And you can actually run this off 14.4 volt batteries as well, but then you're going to have reduced, I guess, frame rates and maybe resolutions?
Yeah, you would. We haven't looked to publish what the limits would be, but naturally by dropping down into 14.4 you're going to have an upper limit then in what the sensor can actually run. So your frame rate or some of the higher end performance would drop down, and then naturally as well your output connection for accessories would drop. So we've got a 3-pin Fisher and a 7-pin LEMO on the front. At 14 volt they would be lower as well in terms of the output. At 24 volt they are 2 amps shared, 24 volt out, and naturally they would drop down as well, so your accessories would take a little bit of a hit.
So in terms of the actual power draw of this camera, I mean it's going to vary depending on frame rate and resolution, but what's the range of voltage that it uses?
Between 80 and 150 watts. 80 for the camera body and the unit itself, maybe in a standard mode. 150 is at the top end. That would be, again, naturally if you're drawing and using all the power out on the front, driving servo lenses, the meter itself, and driving all the LCDs. So there's a range within there up to 150 watts.
So along with the Ursa Cine, there's also a new EVF that you've announced that not only works with this camera, will work with some of your other cameras, and it's actually everything's going through USB-C.
Yeah, so the Ursa Cine EVF is a redesign of the previous Ursa EVF system we had. It's a single module in terms of the EVF electronically, but designed around the new rigging system as well, which is a fantastic new industrial design for quick setup. Whether you want the EVF to be front camera or to rear, we can accommodate those things. It's a new OLED display as well with some new function buttons in terms of the capability of it. But certainly, as you said, USB-C in terms of the connectivity, so that gives us power and data, and it gives us some options and capability about where you position the EVF and how you're using it on the camera as well.
Some people might ask and say, well, why didn't you use a more professional connection on the viewfinder than USB-C? Is there a rationale behind that?
Really the way that we wanted the display output and the control to the EVF, the way that we use it, the data information and what we can pass over from a digital information point of view over USB-C is really the key to that, and then drawing the power through USB-C as well. So for us it's more of an adaptable system, and as you said, we could take this EVF from the Ursa Cine and we could use it on the new Pixus as well. So the owners of that camera can actually access an EVF, which is a very high quality, designed around Ursa Cine, but for our smaller digital camera as well.
I guess that's the point there, because it's a universal, more of a slightly universal EVF, that if you had have gone with a more, well, a different type of connector on there, you wouldn't have been able to use it with some of the other Blackmagic cameras.
Yeah, be a little bit more locked in maybe, and when we wouldn't have that capability of people to try it between different camera bodies. And maybe in the future as well, we'd have a standard EVF platform that we can bring to other cameras.